Hey, Jeepers, it's Scott here from On the Trail with Kevin and Scott. I am actually speaking with Kevin and Rick from Baxter Performance. As you know, I am running their product on my 2020 Gladiator. We saw them at Jeep Beach 2023, I think it was, or 2022. Yeah, it was 2023. When it, Rick? Was that when I met you? 23, okay.
Yep, this year.
Yeah, I've slept since then, and now I've completely forgotten who I am. So with that, we'll go right into the interview. I know it's a lot of people you've asked some questions, so we have them on, and we're going to start from the very beginning. Guys, tell us a little bit about yourself and how Baxter Performance came to become the company it is today.
Well, this is Kevin, by the way. But anyways, it all evolved basically when I bought my wife a 2010 Toyota RAV4, and it had a V6 in it. And I have a mechanics background and more in the aviation side, but I've always done my own oil changes, relocated oil filters and everything, made them more convenient and easy to get to and things like that. So anyways, I went to do the first oil change, and of course, it had the cartridge filter mounted on the bottom of the V6, and it was just really, really hard to get off. That thing was stuck. I mean, to the point that I had to actually use a pipe over the end of a ratchet. Everybody's done that at some point, probably, but I had to get some good leverage and had my foot against the driver's side front tire and just reefing on that thing, and finally it broke loose. So the Toyota, people that own Toyotas and that have experienced that, they can relate to this.
Oh yeah.
But finally off and everything, and I was thinking, darn, there isn't an anti-drain back valve anywhere in this system, in the cartridge filter, the cap, or anywhere that I could see. So I looked at the engine schematics online, and I thought, wow, well, that's a big deal, because even though the filter is mounted on the bottom, you still get flow back on it to where it flows back to a level of equilibrium at the base of the engine. And it doesn't retain anything post-filtration in the engine, so it has to make up for a certain volume of oil before it can actually start doing its job. And in fact, they started having problems with the variable valve timing and the general on especially in smaller displacement engines like the 1.8 liters like they put in the Corollas and the Priuses. But in any case, I decided, well, I'm going to see if we can, if I can get an adapter for this. Well, nobody made it. And so I decided, well, I thought I'd tackle it. And first one I made was a remote, and relocated it to the top of the engine bay there, and then developed a spin-on style, and just went from there. And so for the first few years, we were just doing Toyotas. But we discovered there was other things going on, and then I'd known Rick for a number of years, and decided to ask him if he'd like to join me in this endeavor to exploit this kind of product. And he got on board, and it evolved from there.
Cool. That's kind of interesting. When was this? Like about a handful of years ago? Because I know I've worked for. What's that?
Yeah. 2015. Yeah, actually, I formed the company in late 2014, and started. Went to the first SEMA show that we went to. It was in 2015. Sold our first product in 16, like January of 2016. So yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, you guys have been around a while then. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. So basically, you started with the Toyotas, and then, because again, you talked about the no drain back valve, and I've been working with Lexus Toyota brand since 2004, and I know all too well you're talking about those oil control valves and different situations they were having. Because, matter of fact, right now, they're having a lot of problems with the front timing cover reseals, and that's the one thing I just kind of think of. When I saw your guys' product, I was really fascinated by it, because the 0W20 oil, depends on who you ask. Some people are going to say it's too thin and whatnot, and so on and so forth. But when I especially heard the fact that you guys have the ability to have that anti-drain back valve, that gives those camshaft lifters and every single engine component that a tiny little bit more extra protection that, honestly, especially been doing this for 27 years with automotive, I have seen firsthand they're starting to show some problems with this thinner oil, and every little bit you can help, like with these anti-drain back valves, to me, that's money well spent, in my opinion.
Yeah, and a lot of people, they think if they go to a higher viscosity oil that it's going to coat better or do something better. Certainly, you're going to see higher pressures, and that's due to the fact that viscosity is directly relatable to the efficiency of the pump and how it gets through all the openings and everything. So, 20s, it's like water. It's very thin, but with the tighter tolerances and clearances held in these engines now, and the ability to machine to those tolerances and everything, it just has to get into tighter spots, and that's really why they have the lower viscosity oils. It helps gas mileage too. There's no argument there. But the conditions at which the engine operates necessitates a thinner oil these days. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one of the questions I did want to ask you guys when it came time to do these adapters and all that. You guys, obviously, you guys have doing very well at the moment. But my main question, one of the listeners actually had, was when it comes to the installations and different, especially on the 3.6, because we all have heard horror stories. We all know about the camshaft issues and everything else, especially with the housing and leaking and whatnot. When did you guys really decide to make that leap into the Jeep market? Because you saw the need for the product, or was it something where does somebody own a Jeep? I guess is the question.
Well, I was looking at, of course, after developing the Toyota components, and they were mounted underneath and everything. I said, so I started wondering about what was going on with some of the mostly foreign makes, right? With like Mercedes-Benz, and they had the oil filters mounted on top and everything. And I started looking at that, and I thought, I tore into those engine schematics, and I found out that, some of them actually have a check valve going into the cartridge filter housing. And I thought, okay, it's probably still, emptying out of the filter housing itself, but at least it's staying prime between the pump and the housing, with that check valve. And, but since I had kind of access to, it was a Jeep Cherokee, and it was a transverse mounted engine. It was a 3.2, but it's the same as the 3.6 as far as its layout. So, so anyways, I thought, I'll bet you that thing's draining out. Of course, everything online, you talk in these forums and everything, and it was all speculative. No, the oil stays up there. They wouldn't make it if it, if it wasn't going to hold oil up there, who would do that, kind of thing. And so they were all, and then, speculating about it. And some people would say, well, I take my filter out and it's totally coated with oil and everything. And then they have that drain tip on the end of the filter, which is just like a stopper in a sink, so it only serves one purpose at one point in time. And that is to pull out of this port when you remove the filter so that the oil will drain down quickly. But truth be told, we know it drains out in about 35 minutes anyways, with or without it. But what I did was I got a pressure rated sight glass and mounted it to the top of one of the oil caps and put LED lights in it and a camera mount and everything, and turned it on and said, okay, let's see what happens here. So we watched it, and I got that thing drained out in 35 minutes.
Holy cow.
We knew that we knew we had an issue that we could possibly solve here. And so, how are we going to do this? How are we going to make one that goes on top, and how are we going to empty the filter, and how are we going to get a metal piece to lock into place, because we're going to have to clock it to a certain position. And, so one thing leads to another. So there was all these challenges, right, that had to be mitigated, and that made it possible to, have this adapter. And so there's several components in the adapter specifically for the Pentastar engine that makes it possible. One is the spring-loaded docking collar, so no matter where you clock it to and it backs out, it still holds the sealing pressure for the seal at the base of it. And then the cleat design, and we have a patent on that. Everything we're talking about too, the docking collar, the cleat, all those things are patented or patent pending. And so the cleat had to be invented basically to hold it in its clock position in plastic, right?
Yeah.
And the plastic, really plastic. It's the housing of the oil filter is actually a glass reinforced nylon, composite material, and it's very tough. Mm-hmm. And so when you lock our cleat into place, it doesn't mar or do anything like that. It actually locks it in rotationally without damage. So you really don't have to worry about that happening. And then, of course, we needed an outflow check valve, because even with an anti-drain back valve that you find in most spin-on filters, that wasn't enough. We noticed that the air was migrating from the outflow side into it and was still draining, much like on the Mercedes with a check valve, right?
Right.
It's have a check valve on the, going to the filter housing to maintain prime all the way back to the pump, but it still drains out of the outflow side. So we had to find some way to keep that air from migrating. And so we invented a check valve that was a linear type that has guides in it to hold it totally straight. And it also has a bulbous end on it so that we don't get any kind of cavitation or low pressure on the backside of the opening of it. So it's the only check valve out there that opens on the very end. So that's unique for our product as well. So all these challenges, all these different things came into play. And of course, having a Schrader valve on there so you could purge the oil filter before you removed it. So there's 4 basic things that came into play to develop this and put it all together in a package, and now we sell.
There you go. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the bleeder valve, because one of our listeners, Mark, he had a big question. He's like, Scott, what happens if you don't bleed off the pressure and you just take off the oil filter? And I'm like, I don't know. I will ask that question for you, Mark, because I don't want to cause a mess. So what would happen if we didn't bleed the pressure?
Well, so understand where it's not it's not pressure it's retaining. It's just retaining a volume of oil in there. But
Gotcha.
If you were to push down on the center of the Schrader valve, like you would let air out of your tire, basically, you push on the center plunger, oil would come out of it, but it wouldn't be under pressure. It would just be oozing out, But yeah, you have to apply some air to it. Some people use a bicycle pump. I had one guy called me. He said, "Well, I was going to use a bicycle pump. Can I do that?" And I said, "Well, sure." He said, "Well, how many pumps is that going to take?" And I said, "I don't know. How big is your bicycle pump?" So do you have to use a compressor? No, it's better to use it though. And but also, one nice thing about using the Schrader valve, if you stay on it for a few extra seconds, you'll hear bubbling going on inside the oil pan, and that is because it's flowing on the pickup tube and the screen that is at the base of that pickup tube. Any debris that's on that, now you can blow that out, cool. And then when you open up your sump, you drain out the debris that may have collected on the end of the pickup tube screen, but there's no other way to clean that unless you were to remove the oil pan. So that's kind of a side benefit, that occurs because of that.
That actually is kind of cool, because I use I have a compressor here at the house, and again I do 30 psi because I read the instructions because Kevin made sure, and I put the Schrader valve in. You hear the bubbling like you say, and it says to give it 10 seconds. Or is it 10 psi at 30 seconds? I can't remember. That's in the instructions. But
it really doesn't matter.
But you hear the bubbling for a split second. You're like, that's kind of disturbing. But hey, that's what the instructions say to do. And then I took my oil filter off, no mess. Spun the new one back on, which is really nice. I don't have to have the 24 socket and kind of that whole. Again, I'm really worried about because I see guys at work doing it all the time. They try and crank that down. I'm like, guys, the cap gets to a spot and it stops. That's how you break those filter housings. And right. I like that spin-on filter. I like the metal. I just like the benefit of seeing that spin-on filter up top. That really, really makes me feel a whole lot better. But going back to when you were saying about the drain back, when Kevin and I did the installation, it was a funny saying because he was expecting oil to come out, and when I said no oil in there, he's like, what? So we pulled the filter out because we let the car cool. Sorry, the Gladiator cool for at least 2 hours before we did the installation, and that filter housing was bone dry. And he's like, that's disturbing. I said, wait till I start it. We put everything in, and Kevin got to hear what I referred to as the box of rocks. Because when we did that first dry start, after the installation, you heard for a good 2 or 3 Mississippis, just the bottom end or no oil pressure and the top end, everything. And he's just like, whoa. And I actually caught that on video, the noise. And I'm happy to report since then, I don't really have that. Now, again, I do have 80,000 miles on the Gladiator of the old cartridge filter. So occasionally I will get a little chatter, but it is nothing like what it used to be. And I'm just so glad I was able to catch that on video. So I'm going to make sure that is displayed loud and proud when I upload the video of the installation, because I haven't done it yet. I wanted to wait till we had this show and recording so I could show this. But again, it was just fascinating about how the difference, just in everything else. But I do actually want to, when I talk to you guys at the Jeep Beach, and you going back to the factory oil cooler, you guys had showed us where only 50 or is it like 50% of the oil actually goes to the oil cooler. The rest of it goes, it gets put right back into the engine. You guys are saying about the different housing assemblies you can get for an external oil cooler. So that is available for mine too, right?
Right. Yeah. Right now we have a remote adapter that's available for the 2014 and newer models. And it doesn't require having a cleat on it or anything like that, because it doesn't, you don't have to rotationally lock it in a certain position or anything like that. Okay. It does have a valve on it though, and that makes it nice. So if you're going to go to external cooling, then it's nice to be able to use that Schrader valve to not only empty the remote filter, but also empty out the oil cooler as well and send it all back to the pan. And so that's very unique. Nobody else is doing that for sure. Using compressed air to evacuate the oil system.
That's really cool. Again, it's fascinating, and when you hold the item in the adapter in your hand, just the level of craftsmanship. One of the things that you guys, because your products pretty much made the stateside, correct? The whole thing.
Yeah. We source locally and have all the machining done here in Spokane, Washington, and the anodizing, the etching. We and then we bring it all together at our shop. We assemble it all and everything, but. These are all ISO rated manufacturers, our machining that's done. So they also, a lot of people do they also have like aircraft, contracts with Boeing and things like that. So, I mean, they have a good rating, and that's why the quality of our product shows the way that it does, for sure.
Yeah. Cool. Hey, Rick, I got a quick question for you though. When it comes to like the marketing and everything, this pretty much sells itself. So do you guys go to shows and events besides Jeep events? I guess you guys just came back from a different, like a Subaru event or something like that?
Yeah, we were down in Portland at Subi Fest Northwest down there. It was an interesting trip. We had an opportunity to talk with a lot of potential customers and stuff who had, just like you there, and that's one of the biggest challenges so far with the adapters is educating the community, because it's a hidden problem within the engine bay, and you'll hear that rattle, but you'll assume it's something else and that there's no way to take care of it. So going to the shows allows us to get to talk to the public, explain exactly what we do and why we're doing it. And quite often, people will challenge what we're telling them, and then we can actually explain that, no, this is really what's happening. On our website, we have videos, the drain out videos, time lapse, that, it'll show that this is in a Jeep, this is in a Subaru, and show the actual drain out. So, yeah, we go to shows. We've got one coming up here, the Great Smoky Mountain Jeep Invasion. This will be the third year in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee for awesome. us. That's one of our more favorite shows. The people there are fantastic and very eager to have a conversation.
Very cool. Very good. The education, like you said, is actually important. And for those of you that do want to check it out, it's BaxterPerformanceUSA.com. That is your website, correct?
Correct.
Cool. And I'll put a link down in the show notes. And speaking of websites, you guys, again, 'cause the education's important and everything else. So you guys even teamed up with Northridge, and they got a video out there, an installation video, where they showed pretty much, pretty much from bow to stern how to put that adapter in, correct?
Yeah, it turned out we got, we got into a relationship with Northridge here early July, and it turned out very, very beneficial for both parties. They did a video that Tim Lund is the one who put it together, and he's very, very articulate and very good at the explanation of how everything works. And
awesome.
Within 3 days, we had over 10,000 hits on the video right out of the gates. And we're also running a promotion there with them, in conjunction with them, for a free adapter and a swag bag from Northridge 4x4. That goes on through the month.
Cool. So definitely check the websites out for all that. And let's say I'm in Florida, like I am obviously in Florida, and I'm more of a DIFM. We could go to your website, and do you guys have a list of like installers and like shops that would be in my area kind of thing?
You bet.
Awesome.
We've got a couple of places, Jeepers Den in Florida. We've got Tennessee. They're scattered throughout the U.S. These places, if you want to buy the adapter, they'll ship it to you. But moreover, that they recognize a problem when you come into their garages, and they will install the adapter for you, so you don't have to go through that process.
Very cool. Very cool. So you guys are pretty much, you got the marketing locked down there, don't you, sir?
There's still always a ways to go.
Absolutely. Well, that's the interest.
But we're trying.
There you go. Well, that's the one thing that, again, because, Kevin, he's an engineer, and I wish he could be here for the show. But it's so interesting because, again, I know I said about when you hold the product in your hand, you look at it. It's, because, again, we did a show a while back about how someone asked about a cheap snorkel, a knockoff. And I bought it, and I held that in my hand and went, yeah, this is why it's cheap. And then, Kevin, I held this adapter in my hand, and even Kevin's like, man, you can see the level of workmanship, okay? And when a company stands by their product and puts time, effort, blood, sweat, and tears, you recognize a solution for something. Because, again, those engine bays are time bombs, sometimes. Because, again, you don't know. It's disturbing when they're rattling. But as I tell people all the time is, again, the oil is the lifeblood of your engine. Let's keep it cool. Let's keep it in the important spinny bits, because as Kevin and I always preach, oil changes are cheap. Any kind of oil change, whether it be differential, transmission, engine oil, those are inexpensive compared to engine overhauls. And again, every single thing, every arrow of importance you can put in that quiver, whether it be, the Baxter Performance, a good quality engine oil, the good quality, oil filter you use, it's pivotal, that will give you your Jeep, especially when you're like me and I drive the Gladiator, especially off road, like I stole it. I just want to make sure that I sometimes I forget I got to drive this thing home. So that's one of the key important things. Plus, it's also going to be used as a tow rig for Autumn's 1942 GPW that we're going to start trailering to events. But on top of everything else, again, the stuff we've talked about, anything else that you guys talk about education and trying to get these word out to these people. So if I'm on the fence and I want to know more about, the 3.6 adapter and what would you have an audience here to say, to extend that educational branch, if you will? What was the one thing that people should know about if they're on the fence about this product?
Well, I think really it's about cause and effect here. It's more about understand we have people with brand new Jeeps putting these things on, because they don't want to have a problem later on and having a good preventative care situation. But so many times it's just there's systems that exist in the engine that don't require lubrication as much as they require pressure, right? So you got your cam chain tensioner, you got your cam phaser. gears, those items require the hydraulic pressure from the oil to engage and work properly. And without that pressure existing and everything, excessive wear occurs. And that can be problematic for that, like I say, the cam phaser gears, basically they require hydraulic pressure for a pin to come into place and hold the gears in phase, right?
Right.
And part of the variable valve timing system. And so just those ancillary things that are going on, not directly related to the operation of the engine necessarily, to make it run, but to make it run efficiently, right? And so there's just, like I say, it takes 3.5 seconds to get oil pressure to the left head on the 3.6. That's because it has to go up, fill up everything up top, then it has to go back down to the main oil distribution galley that runs across the top of the crank, the length of the engine. Then it goes back up to the heads. So you can see with all that routing and everything that it has to deal with, that it's very problematic to attain that pressure and provide lubrication for sure. And the only thing ahead of the oil when it's filling up all these things is air. So you're actually blowing air through everything before it gets there. So it's just cause and effect, very problematic for the engine to wear over a long period of time. I mean, it needs to wear in there's one thing to break in an engine to have that kind of wear going on, but it's another thing to actually break the engine, have that kind of wear going on. And that's what happens over time without proper lubrication pressure.
Yeah, because air does not make for a good lubricant. Trust me on that. No, but that's one of the things. Like, so moving forward, obviously you guys are continuing. Obviously, you have products for the Bronco 2, or sorry, the new Bronco that came out.
Yep.
Are you guys on that continual striving for different new products and R&D and things like that?
Yeah,
well, yeah,
we're working towards that all the time. I mean, the Mercedes Sprinter van, we're just launching at the end of the week. We've got a new combo pack for the Jeeps, because as you know, in that engine bay, the real estate is so limited. You just
Yes.
can't put a remote mount in there. Well, after months of searching, we found a place underneath the car that's got some pre-tapped holes that we built a bracket, designed a new mount, and we're getting it in the box and ready for, it's a complete kit. It'll be the adapter, the remote mount, the brackets, all of the O-rings, all
Nice.
of the AN fittings, everything. It's all turnkey with this kit. It's not like you're working on it and then all of a sudden realize you got to go to Napa to buy something else. So.
Yeah.
We're providing both ends of it. We're providing the adapter for the engine, and we're providing the remote mount. And to Rick's point, also the Dash 10 and fittings. But it's up to the consumer to provide the hoses and the oil cooler if that's what they're rerouting for. Some guys, they have these superchargers sitting on top and everything. There's no room, physical room or clearance to allow for the direct to spin on adapter, but we recommend going to a cooling system anyways.
Yeah.
If you're boosting, you got more blow by on the pistons, you're heating up the oil more. And we talked earlier, or you mentioned the fact that it was bypassed by 50% on the stock oil cooling system.
Mm-hmm.
And it only sees the temperature coming out of the cooler. It doesn't see the bypassed oil that mixes with the cooled oil going back into the engine. So by virtue of the placement of the oil temperature sending unit, it's always lying to you. It never tells you what the true oil temperature is going back into the engine, because it is not in a place to measure the mixed temperature when it gets back together with the bypassed oil. So there's definitely a need for additional cooling on the oil system. And there's so many other makes and manufacture of oil coolers, thermostat controls, and things like that for the oil, that we're not in that game. We simply provide a path or a way to incorporate those systems on the Pentastar that is not available by anybody else but us up till now. Now we're going to have the ability to remotely mount the oil filter as well. And where that's going to be is going to be on the driver's side toward the front of the engine at the bottom. Nice. There's a there that if the engine was transversely mounted, let's say in a Dodge minivan, that's where the air conditioning compressor would be. Okay. But because the differential and things like that come into play, they don't want to have something bulky down there and everything because it sits just above that diff. Now, we did, when we developed this, we tested it with a stock suspension system and clearance, and to make sure that there was no way the diff could come up into the into that area, and in fact, it did not. At least not with the space that is occupied by our remote filter. So we're relocating it basically to the bottom of the engine, just like the old style. But to Rick's point, there's just not enough real estate on top to put it anywhere else. And but our new remote is going to have 6 ports on it. You're going to be able to mount it sideways, upside down, whatever you want to do. So it's got ports out on both sides, plus the top. Plus, it also has a Schrader port on it. So if you chose to put a Schrader valve there, you could and blow down the system from that point. But it's really not needed if you blow it down with the Schrader valve at the point of our adapter, which would be on top. So.
Well, it's when you talked about the engine oil cooling thing, and again, that's what raised my eyebrow because again, it's Florida here. We're closer to the sun than anywhere else in the world, and I know sometimes driving back from Kevin's and the other side of the state, and it's 2:00 in the afternoon. I'm buzzing down I-4. I look down at my oil temperature; it's 220, and when you tell me that's just the temperature of the oil coming out of the cooler, that's in the back of my mind a lot. Going, man, I am boiling this engine from the inside.
Yeah, well, and that's absolutely true. I mean, like I say, it's a false indicator. It's not telling me just by the placement of it. So, I mean, those are little discoveries that we make, along the way when we develop these systems. And there will be many more that I'll go, what the heck is going on here? So that you kind of look forward to that. But, but it holds true for other engines, I'm sure. Just those little points of discovery. We went on and developed one for the 2.7 liter and the 3 liter EcoBoost engines that are used in the Broncos and Ford Explorers, F-150s also. But that system drained out in like 18 minutes, and it goes and it takes the oil cooler with it. It totally goes, and it's pumping up to the top of the engine. Now it has to go back down to the, midship in the engine, just above the crank plane again, and just, and get distributed. What makes it worse for the, for that engine in particular, though, it's a turboed engine, right? Yeah. So, oil pressure is important for that, for those bearings, particularly. So it's kind of, you kind of scratch your head going, why'd they do that? So, but they did, and we proved it drains out. So, we're doing the Ford also. We're also doing the Subarus now because of that, just that crazy system, So, yeah.
I got you. Well, again, this has been quite a bunch of education for me too, because again, you just constantly have to keep thinking about ways to, again, we talked about, again, keeping the engine alive. I know that's someone else's thing or something like that, but it's just interesting about how all the R&D. So if I'm a customer, because Kevin and I really preach this, do you guys have like a helpline or like, an email? Like, is it all through the website? So if I had a question where I wanted to ask about installation or anything else like that, do you guys, freely talk to customers if they call in, or do you have a team for that, or how does that work?
Well, I got to tell you, the phone rings up because people want to know. Some people want to know. They want to make sure what they're ordering is correct, and maybe it's just a simple question like that. And other people are more detailed in their questioning. regarding clearances maybe, or types of oil filters to use and everything. But really most of that information is provided on our website. It's just a matter of, looking at the tabs and getting the information, and that some people they want to order directly from us, like over the phone. They don't want to go to the computer and do it because they're not computer savvy, or maybe they don't even have one, or something like that. And they just heard about us through a friend or whatever. Yeah. But so we do get questions, and sometimes they're quite technical, and other times they're just very simple. So, but yeah, we're available all the time. We get phone calls, emails, for sure. We get questions all the time through our email link, and all of that is the phone numbers and the email is all provided on the front page, basically, of our website, right? Our homepage. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll throw a link to, like I said, the website on the show notes, and to Northridge and everything else. And I can't thank you guys enough for coming out. For one, again, putting the R&D and giving us a product that, a lot of us, again, scratched our heads saying, time to change the rocks. It turns out the rocks are, again, the expensive spindly bits in our engine. But again, we can't thank you guys enough for coming on and educating some of our listeners, because, again, you've answered a lot of the questions I had wrote down. But mainly, I just want to say, if there's anything you guys ever need, again, give these guys a call over at Baxter Performance. Send your emails to them. Check out the videos. Now, you said on the website you actually have the video with the where you had the camera inside the with the LED lighting, and you can actually see for yourself the leak downs, correct?
Yeah, absolutely, and they can see it for the Pentastar engine. They can see it for the EcoBoost in the Ford engine, and we also did it for the Subaru. So yeah, they're available there, and there's other videos available on like Scotty Kilmer is a guy. He's kind of a crazy guy. He's got huge YouTube viewing. And so just things like that, and he's kind of entertaining to listen to.
I'm very familiar with his videos.
we have a whole bunch of installation videos and of course, segments of what we've been had on TV, on some of the on Motor Trend. Mm-hmm.
Very nice. Is there anything else you'd like?
Yeah, we've even
go ahead.
We've even got a video. We hooked up with a couple off-road and chill. So they did an installation of the Pentastar and the 3.2, and then they went back and redubbed it all in Spanish. So we're able to talk to the Spanish audience, and it actually did really, really well as far as
wow,
that.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
Yeah.
So, anything else you guys would like to let our listeners know about? Any other questions, comments, concerns, anything?
Like I say, go in and check out that Northridge 4x4 website and their YouTube channel. They're very aggressive with their pricing, and it's turning into a very good relationship.
Very cool. Well, again, I'll add those notes to the show notes. Again, thank you guys both, Rick and Kevin, for being on the show. And again, thanks again for everything you guys do for the Bronco, Jeep, Subaru, Toyota community. So you guys have got pretty much everyone out there now. Did I miss a brand? I want to make sure I didn't miss a brand there.
No, you did not.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks again, guys. You guys have a wonderful day, and we'll talk to you guys next time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Oh, not a problem. Thank you. Bye, guys.
All right. Have a great. Bye-bye.
Well, Scott, that's awesome. See, you can do it by yourself.
Exactly. I can do it by myself. But again, as we always share, it's time to put the Jeep in 4-low and hit the trail. And with that, remember to take nothing but pictures, memories, and your trash when you leave the trail.
Yeah, we want to keep them open for our kids, and generations and because they do close them, folks. When you mess them up too many times, the Park Service says enough's enough. Mm-hmm. So let's not do it enough. Let's do it just right.
Absolutely.
Anyway, so we'll look forward to the next show, which will be 194. Hey,
exactly. 194. All right, guys. Bye.
Bye.